Okay, I think we'll get started. Thank you for coming. It's good to see so many new faces, a lot of people I haven't met yet, which is great. My name's Maggie Radzik, and I'm part of the Our Lady of Guadalupe Family Life Center homeschool support. And we're very happy to finally get to be starting these meetings. They've been asked for a while, and it's just taken some time to get there, to offer to you the approach that is used in the Montessori prepared environments so that you can be following these same principles at home, so the child is leading more of a unity of life in their educational path. So tonight is on language, and it's actually going to be a little more of what not to do than what to do, but it's still going to be a lot of what to do. I'm going to show you a couple of presentations, but more the basic principles of how Montessori approaches writing to reading and the overall development of language in the child. I want to leave time for questions and then time for you all to go through the language materials and look through everything. You're free to take pictures, definitely questions. We don't recommend in a Montessori school, now this is not a Montessori school, this is a homeschool support, but wherever there's a Montessori school, it's never recommended, and by Dr. Montessori herself, that the parents purchase Montessori materials for the home. Because and I think the same can be said for here, even though they're only in this space 3 half days. There might be a couple of things that I'll mention that you might want to think about, but what typically happens is when the same materials are in the home, either they won't use those in the home and they'll say, no, I had that at school, or they'll come here and they'll say, oh, I've already had that at home, been there, done that, and they won't touch it. So it's more the approach and the principles that we want to look at tonight. So how about we start with a prayer and ask Our Lady to guide us in this evening. We place everything in your immaculate heart, sweet Mother, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Ask the Holy Spirit to guide and direct us this evening. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. So the chart here, the 4 planes of development, which I won't get into tonight because you should have had this before your child entered. I think almost all of you did. But it's just to refer back to where the development of language begins. So as with everything with Montessori, language is never separate from the rest of human development. It's a part of the whole. It's part of intellectual, the development of the will, emotional development, the whole person. So where does language receptivity begin? We know now, and Dr. Montessori believed it began at the moment of conception, but she did not have the technology to prove that. But now it's been proven for many, many years that at the moment of conception, the brand new person responds differently to all different types of language. The new person moves those, just tiny cells, under a microscope, move differently when the mother is exposed to conversation or poetry or prose or music, that the new person actually moves in a different way. And that continues all through time in utero. The baby is stimulated by different timbres of voice. So a male voice stimulates the trunk and the legs of the unborn baby, and a more soprano female voice stimulates the upper part of the body, of the baby's body in utero. So there's this, from the very beginning, receptivity to language. The capacity for receptive language is much longer in the human person, in the beginning, in infancy, than the capacity for expressive language. So, many adults unknowingly, because the child isn't, responding back, can unknowingly not engage enough in what Dr. Montessori called the conversation dance. So I think, just because I think everybody here is Catholic or Christian, there's such respect in our tradition for that newborn life that I think it's safe to say every single one of you in here, the minute you had your baby, you're looking them in the eye, and you're talking to them, and you're present to them. It would be great if that were everywhere, but we'll just keep lighting the candle, right? Shining the light on that. So what Montessori saw is that the child, right after birth, is seeking out the mother's space, and then that capacity for receptive language is just exploding at birth with this huge amount of dendritic growth that happens at birth. And every time the baby hears the mother's voice or the father's voice, the dendrites are just going crazy, reaching out to make those synaptic connections. So from the beginning, we're using rich language. She said we should be putting our children in an environment of rich language, naming everything, telling them everything we're doing to them. Now I'm putting your arm through the sleeve and your little cotton shirt, and you got wet and we're changing you. And then the minute the baby starts making vocal sounds, she said we should stop and welcome that sound and look at them and really act as though the child is saying something because they're preparing to say something. So we stop our talking as long as they're verbalizing, and this is what she called the conversation dance. Then somewhere around 7 to 8 months, the baby starts staring at your mouth. I know you all remember this. They're just wanting those words. Then they start reaching out and they start grabbing your lips. They're wanting those, where are those coming from, those words. So this is the time we're giving even more and more language. They already know tree, so now we're saying Norwegian pine tree, an oak tree, a white oak tree. We're giving the specific names of everything, the names of every flower. And again, we know from technology that the bigger and the longer the word, literally, the more complex the word, the stronger the brain development is. Also, multiple languages. A lot of our families in this program come from 2 languages, which is fantastic. The more languages, the better. In my 0 to 3 training in Montessori, I trained with a woman who had 4 languages in her environment because she had 2 sets of grandparents living in the house. And she just effortlessly spoke 4 different languages by the time she was 3.5. She didn't study it, she didn't, children just, the power of that absorbent mind. They absorb everything in their environment. So we need to be, giving all of this language that's developing them. But the indirect preparation for language is just as important because language is also going to involve the eyes, the hands, to be able to produce the symbols for written language. That also starts at birth. The tracking of the child's eyes, and hopefully a lot of mothers know about moving the thumb across the baby's eyes to see if both eyes are tracking at the same time. Then you can use a bright red ball, and you'll notice in the beginning one eye will not track exactly, and so you slow down and you just keep going until both eyes start tracking. Then crawling, the whole process of pushing up and working the myelin sheathing down the spine to cover all the nerve endings so that the child can become ambulatory. All of that is indirect preparation for handwriting. Crawling with the hands splayed on the ground. I've just been spending some time with the baby who was crawling like this. And the mom said, well, I don't know what to do. I said, this is what you do. You have to do that. You have to do that. Because that, in all of the children, that we've ever seen, anomalies, something just wasn't happening with the pencil grip or they weren't being able to trace the sandpaper letters. The first question we ask is, how did they crawl? Did they crawl with their hands on that firm surface, splayed? So we're putting things in their hands to indirectly prepare them for future work with language. So we could talk a lot about that. I brought my language album right here on top. Later, if you want to go through, these are the presentations that are given in this environment, and there are literally hundreds of language presentations. So again, we're not going to go through all the presentations, but the principles. So from the beginning with this spoken language, Montessori said with that an environment rich in language, it should also be an environment rich in writing. And really, the cursive writing has become a lost art in our culture today. Even 10 years ago, it wasn't so unique. I was recently at a doctor's appointment with my mother-in-law, and I had to write out her medication, and I wrote it in cursive because that's the only way I know how to write. And the nurse had not a clue. She kept saying, "What letter is that? Finally, she had to hand it back and say, "Can you put this in print?" She literally couldn't read cursive. And I thought, wow, so it really has become lost. It's a lost art. Montessori from the beginning noticed, and now, there are these great infant institutes at both Harvard and Yale, and I think it was at the Harvard Institute that they proved cursive writing builds the brain more than print. It keeps the letters together so that the child makes the entire word in one movement. So there's much less difficulty knowing the separation between the words because the words are connected. But what Montessori saw from the beginning is that's how a child's hand naturally moves. When they pick up a stick or a rock or a piece of chalk for the first time or a crayon, their hand naturally moves in loopy, round motions that are connected. They don't start making stick and ball movements until later. They are, and it emanates from the shoulder if we watch how the child does it. So the sandpaper letters that are introduced at 2.5 to 3 when they come, it's a multi-sensory approach. And she experimented with the size, with the colors, so we don't have to change any of that because she observed and figured it out. She was a genius. So what the approach would be is the directress would take 3 of these sandpaper letters, have them face down, and then one at a time on a table, show the child to trace. Let's do it again. Not buh. This doesn't say B-U-H. It says buh. Like the very first sound in baby. Then we think of lots of different words that have buh in it. Baby, blue, and they're looking around the room, coming up with words. We always have the letter that the child's name begins with so that we can do that. So these are passed on, very early, they're repeated, and every child is different with how often they want to repeat it and how quickly they absorb it. But they're displayed like this in the classroom so that that absorbent mind is always absorbing them as they're going about their day. And you'll see children walk by the display many times during the day and just start tracing them. And either they'll say the sound or they won't, and because of the multi-aged environment, you might have an older child saying, that says ah, that the name is A, but that says ah. And the little one kind of looks at them and goes back to tracing, and it's just a language-rich environment. So that's one of the key principles we really urge parents to use at home. If you have those capital letter magnets on your refrigerator, have a bonfire tonight when you go home. They do no benefit for the child at all. We have many children that come in having had those magnets and they write their name in all capital letters. We don't write in all capital letters. Capital letters are introduced much later. If you pick up any book in this room, read 5 sentences, there might be 6 capital letters in all those sentences. It's very easy to introduce the capital letter later. And, from the beginning, if you want to show them that their name, begins with a capital letter, you can do that. Here, we show the lowercase first, and then later we introduce the sandpaper capital letters. After the child has absorbed 10 sounds, 10 of the sandpaper letter sounds, then we start introducing the phonograms. So these come very quickly. After the child is clear that this is k and this is h, the directress would bring k and h to the table and move them together and say, when these come together, then she'd flip this over, they make a brand new sound. Watch. Ch, ch. Let's think of some words with ch. Chocolate, chocolate, chocolate chips, church. Church has it twice. We think of as many words as we can with that. So we don't hold off on introducing the phonograms until the child knows the entire alphabet, because there really isn't a reason to hold off. So they're introduced very quickly. Then the progression goes from the sounds to building words, because writing, Montessori saw that the human person comes to writing before reading. Because the idea, reading is a two-step process, writing is a one-step process. We have the idea in our mind and we want to create it with these symbols. When we're reading, not only do we have to know these symbols, but we have to know the intent of the author also. So she saw that children write first, and usually the first, when the directress is going from the sandpaper letters to the movable alphabet, we start with very simple words on a rug, and it's usually is the first. Let's put that together. Mom. What word would you like to write? We sound it out, and they build words for a long time. And again, every child is different. Some children will stay with the movable alphabet a very long time before they start moving to chalkboard. Some children won't stay with it very long at all. It just depends, each child is different. We have a lot of different supplement material that build on the sounds after they've been introduced. We have little cards where every card begins with that sound. And they love, again, it's vocabulary and matching the vocabulary to the sound. The sound game, and this is a fun one, a lot of parents love to do this at home. The sound game enables the adult to know if the child is hearing every sound and every word. So it's just a tray with little objects, a pineapple. You can imagine how much they love these. A knife, a citrus squeezer, a bat, a pumpkin. And the directress will name all the objects with the child. What is this? Pumpkin, a shell, a star. Then after they've all been named with a couple of children, she'll say, I'm thinking of a word that begins with s. Which object begins with s? And if they pick up pumpkin, the directress would say, pumpkin. Do you like pumpkins? I like pumpkins too. Which object begins with s? Can you find that one? It's star. So the approach is always, affirming what the child has just chosen without correcting. Because correcting with a little one, especially when they're, prior to the age of 6, it can completely close their spirit. So we don't say, no, that's not that sound. If we're doing bring me with the sandpaper letters and we say, bring me the sound f, and the child brings over ul, the directress would just trace ul and say, you brought ul. Love begins with ul, doesn't it? Love. Do you like ul? Is that one of your favorite sounds? Me too. Bring ul back and then come back and let's get another one. And then she knows that the child doesn't know f yet. So we just go back and present it again. Having one of the things we always recommend for families to have of young children in their home is a low whiteboard or a low chalkboard in the kitchen where the child can start making these letters on the chalkboard. The mother or the father can make it and the child can go over it. Think of how many words that are here in this kitchen that have that sound in it. I know one mom said she got the little sticky notes and would write different phonetic words on sticky notes and say, I'm thinking, it's very similar to the sound game, but she was doing what was sticky notes. I'm thinking of an object in the house, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm going to write it. And she would write, rug, rug. What do you think that is? Rug. And the child will go and put it on the rug, and and even do ones that aren't phonetic, because the young one is all about movement too, and that movement with the language is very important. So then after, as they're progressing and they begin to practice the phonograms, most of your homeschool programs are going to be very similar to a Montessori approach, with the whole progression through the blends and the phonograms. We would just encourage, and we don't have a homeschool program that we recommend, because we've just heard from all of you, you've tried this, you've tried that, this one works for that child, and you all are talking all the time. We're not here to endorse any certain program, but especially with the young one, beginning with the cursive, beginning with the phonetic sound of the short sound of the vowels and the phonetic sound of the consonants, helps them so much more than just beginning with sight reading or beginning with the puzzle words, sounding out those phonetic words. Then, once they're getting to be 4.5, 5, that's a great time that they love workbooks at home. And I think it's Miss Elizabeth found a series of phonics workbooks, right? Wasn't that? Yes, she has. Leah, do you know, didn't it go home in an elementary email, the phonics workbooks that I can ask you, Amanda, to send that out, because the children are loving them, and the series that she found is very in keeping with the Montessori approach. The pages are reality based. That's another thing, we know about the absorbent mind from 0 to 6. They don't know the difference between what is not real and what is real. The Montessori said the human person is born in love with the world. They want real. So many of the workbooks out there are, Disney characters or cartoon characters. This phonics workbook, it's all reality. It's, girls and boys and baking and working in the garden, and so we'll make sure you get that. Because we don't do homework in Montessori and we don't send work home, they love to have workbooks at home. So we've heard from parents over the years that they couldn't keep ahead of the workbooks. The child wanted to do that at home. So then after the progression with the writing, the indirect preparation for the writing, the child is tracing the sounds, they're hearing the sounds, they're matching cards to phonetic words. I'm going to encourage you to open all of these boxes later when we're finished to see the little slips of paper and the objects that they match. Then they start wanting to write them on chalkboards and then paper. And so the indirect preparation for the hand begins with practical life. Polishing, sewing, everything for hand-eye coordination that's going to give them that ability to have beautiful handwriting. Direct preparation happens with the metal insets, which are these pink and blue metal shapes, the pentagon, the rectangle, quatrefoil, and each one of those has all of the shapes and all of the letters that they will eventually be making. So this is direct preparation. They love to do metal insets. Painting we use very skinny brushes from the very beginning when we do easel painting or watercolor painting, so it's predisposing them to holding the pencil properly. If a child is spooning, that's the indirect preparation for spooning, because we show how to hold the spoon so that it's the same grip, proper grip for the pencil grip. If we do have a child that already has the monkey grip, it works every time to give them teeny tiny pieces of chalk and a chalkboard, and they can no longer hold it that way, and we just have to. Montessori said that's one time you would interrupt a child when they're concentrating if they're using a pencil this way, because it's a very, very difficult habit to break. So we would show them again. Let me show you. This is, it's best for our hands. So then they start writing the simple words, and then they begin writing sentences. After they are progressing through the phonetic words, phonograms, we start doing word studies where we look at the ends of the endings, the ED, ISH, similar to all of the other writing programs that are out there. But then Dr. Montessori developed, it's a very unique, I'm not seeing them here, I know you have them though, Maggie, that she invented symbols for every part of speech. So the 8 parts of speech are introduced at 3 to 6 in this environment, and then they're practiced and gone into in depth at the 6 to 12 in the elementary. But they're done as a game. The first game that's done is noun, but we don't name the parts of speech until the child gets to the elementary age. So if for some reason your child leaves 3 to 6 and they don't go on to the elementary, they've had the experience of the parts of speech, but it hasn't been named yet. So for example, the noun game, it's a very fun game. We would take 3 children that are 4.5 to 5.5, 6, and Maggie would say, I'm going to ask you in just a moment to walk around this room and bring back to this rug something that doesn't have a name. Okay? Ready? Go. And they start walking around, and they all end up bringing something back. And then she would just name it. Oh, you brought back the brass dolphin. You brought back the lamp from the scripture writing desk. You brought back, and she would name what they brought. Please bring those back and bring me something that doesn't have a name. And they're a little confused, and they do it again and again, and finally a child says, Miss Maggie, everything in here has a name. She says, right, everything has a name. This is the symbol for things that have a name. And it's a black pyramid, and then because Montessori chose that because of the history of the pyramid and how long they've been around, and it's a beautiful story why she did that. But then it's a black triangle, and they begin to symbolize words. Then the next game is the adjective game. It's done with farm animals. After they know the names of the farm animals, then she would say to a child, I want you to go to the farm and bring me the horse. And there are 3 or 4 horses, and the child would bring back a horse, and Maggie would say, that's not the horse I wanted. And the child would kind of look, and she'd say, oh, I have to tell you something about the horse, don't I? Bring me the black horse, or bring me the quarter horse, or bring me the Appaloosa if they've done that type of language. So they're getting the experience with the body of all of the different parts of speech. Then they have matching games with noun and adjective, article, verb. The verb game is one of their favorites because they know indoors we don't run, but when we do the verb game, we have little slips of paper with 3 children, and we say, whatever your slip of paper says, we want you to do that until I say stop. And one of the slips will say run, and they'll kind of look at the teacher, she'll say, yeah, and they'll start running, and the other children will say, he's running in the class. Yes, I know he is. It's something special. And the big round rubber ball is the symbol for verb. So they're doing it with their whole body. It's a game. They're learning the symbol. They're symbolizing their sentences. And then when they get to elementary, these are named. They learn about the noun family, the verb family. They start sentence analysis. Actually, sentence analysis begins in 3 to 6 with the subject predicate, the basic parts of the sentence. Then it goes much farther in 6 to 12 with a lot of sentence diagramming. There's a huge chart for direct object, indirect object. They have lots of grammar boxes that they're practicing the parts of grammar. And then all of the homophones, antonyms, synonyms, on individual cards that they quiz each other. So what's fun at elementary, because this is the development of the social, and they want to do everything in groups, they quiz each other on spelling, on all those different parts of language that they have to learn. So I think I'm going to stop there for a moment and just take a few questions before I start talking about books and reading with your child. Anything? Burning question? Yes.
So you had suggested a whiteboard or a blackboard
In the kitchen?
in the kitchen.
Just because
or-
mom's usually in the kitchen.
Is there a preference? Because I found the
You have to, I mean,
markers being hard, but
yes, I would say if you've got a number of children and you're not gonna follow up on the marker and keep them high and this is something you can do when I'm with you, I wouldn't do that. But it is a prompt for children who have not wanted to write. We've seen a number of children that whiteboard workbook, that cursive whiteboard workbook that a lot of parents got over the summer. Some children who were not wanting to write at all loved that. They can wipe off their mistake and practice again. But the littles, yeah, a chalkboard is
okay, because for
great.
example, Vincent, he's 3, Joni, she's 5. Joni loves cursive, by the way, obsessed with
Great.
it.
That's great.
But Vincent, I haven't really done anything with him, so now I'm
Yeah,
kind of
I would start doing his, because the lowercase v is such a beautiful letter. And Valentine's Day is coming up. Just start writing his name and he can go over it, sounding it out. I think his whole name is phonetic.
Yeah.
Soft C, almost.
Close.
Yeah.
I'm
Sorry
sorry.
if you already went over this, but what is the peak supposed to represent, like the 3, 9, 15, 21? Is that the peak of, somehow the peak of self-construction, or we should expect?
No,
Okay.
each plane of development, so this is the first plane, 0 to 6, the second is 6 to 12, the third is 12 to 18, and then 18 to 24. And she saw that there was a waxing and a waning within each plane of development. The 0 to 3 and the 12 to 15 are that bright flaming red because those are the two most creative periods in human life. You see with 6 to 12 and 18 to 24, there's really no change. It's a big intellectual development period, but really the child's just growing in height and no huge change like from 0 to 3 or 12 to 15. Yeah, there is a transition. Thank you, Janice, I'm glad. There is a transition at the peak, and this is usually when around 9, 8.5 to 9, parents start saying, oh, there's something's, they're kind of, well, they are getting farther along in that plane, and they usually need greater responsibility. They're really ready for more, and they don't know how to ask for it. With 0 to 6, she said at 3, life begins again. They are ready for a step outside of the home and not to be socialized. She believed they were not in need of a social life until after the age of 6, other than the family and the family's friends. But at 3, they're wanting to work and they have become conscious. She called this the period of the unconscious absorbent mind, and then 3 to 6, the conscious absorbent mind. Now they become very intentional with what they want to learn. And you'll see these, 3.5-year-olds coming in wanting the map, and they'll want that map over and over and over again, or the binomial cube, or whatever it is. They become very intentional, where the toddler wants anything. Anything you give them, they want to work with. They just want activity, period. They want to be moving and to be active all the time, and they're very easily redirected.
So would you say not to introduce the child to a print lowercase at all?
No, so thank you. So the cursive is living language, print is historical language. So every book we're going to read to a child is going to be print, and they just absorb it. But when we're writing, when we're making prayer cards for our prayer table at home, when we're writing a thank you note, when we're writing their name, that's living language. We're using cursive. Later, when they say, I want to write this in print, we say, great, write it in print. But it meets their natural need to introduce cursive. Now, we really wanted the elementary parents to come tonight because many of you didn't have your children in 3 to 6. So we wanted you to know what they didn't have, and we're still trying to introduce them to cursive. Some are very open to it, some not so much, so we're not, forcing it. I think on Thursdays we were doing handwriting practice where we were asking them to write a couple of sentences in cursive. Some really loved it, some didn't. That's okay, we're just going to expose them to it. But we wanted you to know what the progression is. But usually around 6, 6.5, 7, they want to start writing in print. And then they just go back and forth.
So I'm not confusing her by adding an additional thing to learn with the print letters. Because I've introduced the print letters in, knowing that she's learning the cursive here.
Who's she?
Kiara.
I wouldn't, she just absorbs them from books. I don't think you have to introduce them, but, she's 5 now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
fine.
she's like obsessed with workbooks,
Oh, great,
so
great.
it's in all her workbooks,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not confusing. I just wanna make sure I don't wanna mess anything
Yeah,
up.
I would not do that at 3,
Okay.
but 5, 5.5, sure. Yeah, they've absorbed so much already. Yes, and reading. There's a gentleman in Oklahoma, I think he's at Clear Creek, who runs the teachers' workshop. A lot of homeschoolers know him, Dr. Andrew Poudois.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, he's great guy. 7 or 8 children. His daughter was a Montessori teacher and she and I worked together. We had him come to our last school and speak. And he gave an adolescent workshop, a language adolescent workshop for 3 days, and what they got in 3 days from him was incredible. So maybe we can do that one day. The amount of, it was really amazing. But he says, and he's lived it, done it, if you read aloud to your children for 2 hours every evening, and I asked his daughter, I said, really? And she said, every evening, 2 hours after dinner. He just read. Not every child stayed for the whole 2 hours, but he said, you'll never have a child that won't be completely fluent in. And it's true, all of them, and I've known a lot of families that have done it, and I haven't known a lot that have done the whole 2 hours, but I just can't emphasize reading aloud enough. And then when you're reading to the little ones on your lap, running your finger under the words sometimes, but the what not to do, not to have them feel pressure. A child can feel it when the parent wants them to read, they feel it. Reading should be this gift that we're passing on, that it's this beautiful, special, it's a part of our home, it's this wonderful part of human heritage that I want to share with you. Let's get a new book, let's look at this, repeat the same favorite, how they want to read the same book over and over, these beautiful, my good friend with 7 children, she rotates the books in her children's area 4 or 5 times a year, and they can't wait till the Christmas books come out. And on their bookshelf, every book has changed overnight, and it's all these beautiful Christmas books. And then, later the spring books come out, and, oh, Mommy, you changed all the books, and they get so excited, and they're all on the ground looking through the books, and it's the same ones year after year, but they're new because you're rotating them and it's going with the seasons and the feast days. Definitely in keeping with Montessori, I can't emphasize enough the importance of reality-based books from 0 to 6. The young child does not seek out fantasy. It frightens them, it confuses them, it diminishes their spiritual life in a really profound way. The longer I'm in this work, that's the one thing, if I told parents anything, to leave out the fantasy before the age of reason. They're different children, they really are. They lose touch with the beauty of God's creation and reality, and they start wanting that world of fantasy. They're not, Montessori said the saddest thing about introducing fantasy is they lose the love of reality. you know, they start seeing reality and it's not as great as this thing that gets my, you know. So there are so many beautiful reality-based books out there. I just gave this baby for his 6 month that book by Patrick O'Flaherty. What's it called? Journey. Yes, it's a big, thick book carried at the bookstore. He's done all the photography and it's got one sentence of these famous, you know, you don't even have to read the sentence to them. Just look at this whale jumping in Iceland and the, you know, every time you look at it, you can add a little bit more, you know, a little bit more about what you're looking at and the variety of God's creation. And so, yes.
When you mentioned reading for a couple hours in the home, is that more for an older child? Because like say my children,
Whole
for example,
family.
I don't know if they would ever sit that long. I don't know if I could sit that long. But
Yeah.
so even if I said 30 minutes instead, when I'm reading them, say 30 minutes at night,
You're not expecting Luke to be sitting there.
they can run around, they can leave and come and go.
Yes, yes.
And-
But just like with the family rosary, you're gonna keep praying the rosary, they're running over there, you know, but you're gonna keep going. And they're gonna absorb it. And eventually they're gonna love some book, you know. Yeah, start small, definitely don't. I mean, he started with his oldest, I think with an hour. And then, yeah, the little ones are always kind of in and out, but when it becomes part of the family culture, there's nobody else to play with because they're all there listening to dad, so they tend to, you know, come. But they can bring their puzzles, their, you know, building blocks while they're listening. You know, they should never just be expected to,
And you
you know,
would still
till
do
much older.
the method of I read a page and I show them, you read it and then show them.
I would have them more
Just one reading
casual.
with you.
Yeah, on either side, you know.
Okay,
It's-
whatever naturally happens. If they're in front of
Exactly.
you, then maybe you would show them, but if they're
Exactly.
next to you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and he should be heading into that phase, maybe he's already there, of the tiny things, you know, I love that stage. I just think this is fascinating that Montessori saw this, that she said they, at some point around 2, the human person has absorbed the whole, they've taken in the whole. Now they start focusing on the parts and they become fascinated with teeny tiny little things. And I remember in my toddler class reading the same book over and over, and one day this child had heard it, had to have been 100 times. All of a sudden he noticed there was this little edge on each page of little spiders, teeny tiny, and he had to touch each one over and over and over, you know, and how many times had he seen it? But it's this moment when they get into, and he'll start doing that with some of your books. He'll start noticing something he's never seen before, and it's beautiful to get to witness that.
Yes.
Yes.
On the subject, why was evening preferred, or is just?
Oh, I think just for that family.
Okay, so
He
it doesn't
worked.
matter, it doesn't matter when,
Right.
it's just as long as it's 2 hours.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I don't know that I did. Christina.
How about, is there a difference between reading aloud to your child versus an audiobook? Like how can they read along and
I
listen? Like
think so.
Lucy can read, but she likes to read and listen. Because I can't always, I'm busy doing something, I'm like,
Yeah.
she'll do it.
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean, if they like that, great, but the whole family together, there's something very different with mom or dad's voice and the way you're going to emphasize something. All of a sudden you're gonna stop and you're gonna say, oh, do you remember that happened to us? You know, those things won't happen if it's, so not to do that, but also to have that time together reading aloud.
Sorry, just to clarify, 2 hours straight, or 2 hours in total of the day, like 1 hour in the morning?
That's a
one hour
good
in the
I'm gonna give you Andrew Dubois' email. He did it straight, but you know,
Wow.
yeah, we're all, I have Genevieve, I think she's got 4 children now and they're doing it in her home.
Wow. Yeah. I think well, I've never done 2 hours that long, but I remember that, and now I can see the difference with like America, because since she was in my belly, I was reading to her, you know, and then when she was born, I read to her every single night. Look, baby stuff.
Yeah.
But as soon as she turns 1, I start reading to her Bible kids and saints. And then when it started like at 3, that I really point at her the words, but I try not to skip any night. And now I can see that she's 6 and she loves reading. I start with her like 2 months ago, reading every single day 5 minutes out loud, and she reads to me. Because when we go to bed, I always read to her. And she loves, and she doesn't want me to stop. And I said, no, you have to go to sleep. And then now, we start like 15 minutes, that she has to read to me every single day, 15 minutes out loud. And then sometimes we skip because things to do. But now I can see, like today, before I came here, that she didn't want to stop. Like, there's really good books that I recommend to the parents that are here that I have found for first readers, like in Seton Press, Abeka, which is Christian, but it's really good, it's so real. And they are really good with phonics, and they give you like steps, and it's really, really from the first ones, like the first level, second level, or third level, and it's really, really, really nice because they are learning real stuff, but as well, it's teaching them everything about God. And the other books is from christianbook.com, which is where I can find other things, but it's really good for us to have them at home, and it's really enrichment. And what I found is that because I stopped when she was like 2 or 3, I'd start to read to her Princess and stuff like that, and then I'd start to see kind of reactions, and then I'd stop, and I'd switch again to Saints and the Bible. And what I do is I buy different kinds of Bibles, and I switch for her in English and Spanish. And then now she's like, okay, Mama, so which Bible are we reading today? And then I try to keep her like in that kind of thing, or it's Saints. She can choose to me and say, no, Mama, I want to know about this week Saints. And then we choose a book and we just read about Saints. But when I want to ask you, it's not first readers book, but you can say third graders, and I point at her the words while I'm reading it. And she's like keeping it, the reading, keeping it, and when it's a hard word, I repeat to her, and I said to her, if you wanna sound it, sound it. And then if she doesn't wanna sound it, it's okay, you know, because I don't want to discourage her,
Right.
that it's a hard word to read, but I try not to look books that she cannot read. Because if I see that there are hard words, then I just leave it. And I said, okay, no, Mamita, no, that's not a good book for us now. We just skip it in. And I found that it's like, we'd start one Abeka book, and she wants to finish it all, like in 2 days. And I'm like, oh, I like this, because it's like a motivation, which is book instead of watching something else.
Yes, and the screen time is, which I know almost all of you limit tremendously. Introduction to the screen, you can just see the reading level just go down. Not even just the reading level, but the desire to read, you know, where it's the path of least resistance, you know? It's the same with us. If we can just kind of turn that on and numb out, you know, it's better to have it out of the way, and it's something very special. And we know from brain development, 0 learning happens before the age of 8 through screens. 0 learning. There can be some memorization, but not authentic learning. And if you really want all of that information, you can go to Dr. Angeline Lillard at UVA. She is a research professor at UVA, Lillard, Angeline Lillard. She has all of the cutting edge research on screens and brain development with aggression, with lack of concentration, there's just no good comes from it. Yes.
Can I ask a question? What about typing? At what age or?
Yeah, all I can speak from is from our Montessori training, and it was around 9 to 9.5 that they wanted to start doing papers on the computer, and the Montessori trainer said that seems to be like kind of the cultural time to do that, 9.5, 10. And they didn't even have to, we showed them how to hold, it was literally like a minute presentation. The desire is so strong to do what they see the parents doing that they were teaching themselves very quickly. Yeah. Yes.
With the letters, I know that is different, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
for every child too. But when is the time to introduce sounds of the letter?
Oh, the sounds of the letters? Oh, very early, very toddler, baby. Start, showing them, this says mom, this says dad, this says Jesus. Individual tracing them? Is that what you mean, or the sounds?
Yeah, the individual.
Yeah, 2.5. 2.5 is when they're, again, their concentration needs to be able to follow it, and their hand-eye coordination needs to be able to follow. But most children by 2.5 can start tracing the sandpaper letters. One thing the school at Siena did, and it came out of, and we also did it at St. Jerome's, it was a COVID kind of necessity because the children could only come for a couple of hours to the school. We copied those on the copy machine and stapled them and sent them home. And some parents said, my child wanted nothing to do with those, and they were black and white. They weren't pink and blue. We didn't have enough money in the ink, in the copy machine. Other parents said, oh my gosh, my child was constantly bringing them to me. Mommy, show me how to do, and they were calling us, emailing us, how do you make the, does it go this way with the loop or that way with the loop? So I thought that's something we could do over the summer, just experiment, have them. I know different Montessori catalogs have like books of the sandpaper. They're not, I think they might be felt, you can go through. I don't think there's any harm in that if the parent knows. And if your expectation is they might love this, they might not.
You can, before I was able to use these and before I even was teaching, I made my own just with like cardstock and like sparkly glue that had like a little texture to it. And it's really not that hard to do. That's like a cheap way to do it at home.
Yeah. Or in a baking pan, like a 9 by 12 baking pan, you put like shaving cream and you make the letters and then smooth over, because it's tactile, and they love doing things. Or cornmeal, and then you shake it to. Yes.
Going back to like different languages. So in my home, we speak primarily English, but I'm Colombian. My husband his mom's from Mexico. So I do try. I do find Emma Rose resisting Spanish from very early on when she realized that everything else is in English and that was the easiest, the path of least resistance, it was the easiest thing to go to. She gravitated way more to English, and that's like a big kind of burden that I have because my parents want her to speak Spanish. So would you say now at 4.5, or actually 4.5, is it too late? I mean, I continue pushing.
No, she's still absorbing it. I would just really make a concerted effort to every time you talk to your parents, it's all Spanish. And, do some things, I would do a little bit of, let her know that when you don't want her to find something out, you're speaking Spanish. Because she's gonna wanna find, something that's gonna make her go, wait a minute, what? And try and hone into that,
on that subject, I too am from a bilingual household. How do you introduce phonetically, do you introduce the phonetics in both languages?
No,
Okay, so
yeah,
when we're
just-
doing phonetics, just to stick to one?
yes, yes. And then they'll start asking. And you can, after they are very fluent and they've absorbed that, then they love to say, or this says, in
Would
Spanish.
you recommend doing the phonetics in the language that they're more,
I would
fluent in?
do English because
Oh,
that's,
English, okay.
yeah. And then let them ask.
I just remember hearing this from somebody with yours kind of situation. I don't know if you would recommend this, so I'm curious your opinion, Maggie, but so if like a child is resisting and it's just hard to like incorporate having one day a week where you're just like, on Sundays, we speak only Spanish. And that's just the way it is.
Yep.
And
I've known a few families that only spoke Latin on Sunday.
and started, and that's so
I was
nice.
like, wow, how did you do that?
Yeah.
I thought you couldn't speak, but.
Buenísimo.
Must have been a quiet day.
Oh, maybe that was the point.
But I
Smart
think, and
parent.
then even making it a fun thing, because your husband knows it, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
I
the first day she's a little bit, or maybe the first couple times she's like, maybe not thrilled, but I bet you she will come around to that.
Yeah.
And then.
I bet she's absorbed a lot more than you think she has too.
Oh, no, and I
You
think,
know.
I know that she knows, cause I'll speak to her and she knows exactly what I'm
Oh, good.
saying, what
Good.
I need, and,
Good,
you
yeah.
know, but she still say, can you just say it in English? And I say, I really don't want to right now, like, she fights it, but I
Yeah.
just care.
Yeah, I wouldn't make her, but you just.
Spanish to her.
Your parent,
Oh, she knows that with my parents, she has to make an effort.
move them in.
They want her to move here, but they won't. But,
Yeah, I would say just don't give up,
no, I can't.
because I so badly wish
Yeah.
I could give that to my child.
I know.
So I think it's such a gift, so don't give up, but don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah. Because it's a shame that from parents that are, Hispanic, or
Mhm.
their kids doesn't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
If you can give
Yeah.
that to them,
Yeah.
they will thank you when they grow up,
Yes.
because they will need it.
Yep.
Definitely.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. I really encourage you to come and look at all of these materials, open the boxes, look at the phonogram books with all of the sounds of the long vowel. These are things you can make at home. They love these little books. But again, you don't have to make them at home because they're here, but just so you know what we're presenting. All right.